Hello, Twitch. All right, cool. So, hello again, Owen Bickford. And today I'm continuing some work I've been doing on LiveShowy. So, just to catch you up, if this is your first time watching me live stream, I'm new to this, so I'll be working on an app I've been building called LiveShowy. It's an app basically designed to let you interact with musicians on stage for a live performance. Also, the version I'm building now is more focused on collaboration and real-time interactions over the internet. So I'm at the very early stages of this web-based version, and what I've been working on lately is using passwordless authentication using WebAuthn, or the Web Authentication API. And I think a couple of weeks ago was the last time I live streamed. That was before Impex. So I was out last week, returning from Salt Lake City for Impex, and didn't quite have the energy to live stream. But this week I do have energy, and didn't sit down and create a full plan, but I am kind of wrapping up some work on the branch that I've been working on. So up till now, you've been able to register a device to sign up for an account on LiveShowy using an email address, username. Those have to be unique, meaning someone else can't have already used them. And then the final piece, instead of a password, is you can use either Touch ID, Windows Hello, whatever the Android version is, fingerprint sensor or biometric ID, or you can use a USB security key, like the one I have here is a USB. It's a Yubico. So that's been done for a couple of weeks. What I've been working on, kind of off and on in the past couple of weeks, as I've had time and energy, has been adding a second device. So you can imagine if you sign up for LiveShowy on one device, if anything happens to that device, there's no password reset process either. So how would you be able to access your account from another device? So that's what I've been working on, is adding second device keys. And I'll go ahead and start sharing so you can kind of see what I'm looking at here, because this has been an interesting process. So a couple of things. Oh, it's not sharing. Let's see, screen share. There we go. Okay, so a couple of things going on here. So this is my LiveShowy web project board and GitHub. I really enjoy using GitHub. It's just nice and clean. Doesn't have a ton of features, so it's not maybe ideal for teams of people yet, but I do like what I'm seeing so far. So what I've been working on is adding a new device. So I've actually done some of these things here. I have, let's see. So I've added a temporary code generator. I have an add device button and some logic in the settings view. I don't have a limit yet on devices. Yeah, and then we've got a couple more things to do. I like to anytime I create a card or ticket for a project, whether it's a personal project or work, I like to list the tasks that need to be done. That way, at the moment that I'm thinking through the problem, I can kind of list each item as I see them. This is sometimes forward, future looking, so you may miss details when you do this, but I like to create a list of tasks. That way, whenever I come into it a few days or weeks later, I'm not having to start over from scratch. I've got some kind of guidance on what needs to be done. So it's something I do for myself. So I've actually gone through this process. By the way, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I might have said that this wasn't working on iOS, and that was true, but I've figured out why. So there was some configuration on the web authentication that I had to change. I think attestation had to be set to none. And then the other thing is, and I don't remember if I went over this last time, so bear with me. But the other thing is I have to access the server for LiveShowy through an HTTPS URL. And Safari, at least on the iOS, does not consider localhost to be secure, so it will not even allow web authentication to be detected. It's just basically turned off unless you're serving the site over HTTPS. So what I did to kind of test this and kind of get it working on my iPhone is I'm using ngrok. So I can actually launch the site through the internet. It runs, the server's running on my laptop here, but ngrok is running on my laptop, so I can go to the URL, I can pull up the page, and then I actually can register, I can log in, and then I can also add devices to my user account on LiveShowy. So that's really cool, and that's why here I've got my default key. This was created whenever I registered for my account. So the first key, it gets a label of default just out of the gate. I don't have any support yet for updating these labels. You can only remove a key for now. And also, just before starting the stream, I did register my iPhone through Face ID. So now if I wanted to, let's say I log out from my iPhone app, you saw down here on the shell that it actually did, register a new request coming in. So this is all, again, going through ngrok. If I want to log in now that I've registered my iPhone with Face ID, I can hit my username, I can hit login, and get an error. The fun. Okay, so I'm going to plug this in so I can open up the console for the Safari on iOS, see what's going on there. Because we're getting an error. It's reporting back to the server down there in the shell, but something I've noticed is that some objects in JavaScript do not get translated automatically. They may not be objects, they may be buffers, and some types of some APIs just don't show up automatically. You have to kind of restructure them or freeze the object or something before it can actually be sent to the server through a live socket. Okay, so where am I? I'm going to go open Safari. And then if you've never done this before, so of course it's accessing LiveShowy, that's where I've been most recently. But if you want to open DevTools for your iOS device, you plug it in through Lightning or whatever to your computer, and then you can go into the console like this. So now if I try to log in, this is the error I'm getting here. I guess I don't know how to zoom in on Safari console. Yeah, Command plus doesn't work. Let's see. Try that. Okay, so it's saying that the request was canceled by the user. Attestation none. Okay, so this is the data that's being sent from the server, if I remember correctly. Let me take a look at the WebAuthn. Okay, so this is where, so I'm trying to log in from my phone, so that's happening in the login challenge function. So it receives data that was sent from the server and the socket, so it can push messages back to the server. So this is the data that comes through the detail property, attestation, challenge 64. I know this works on the desktop. I was able to register the key, but whenever I try to log in through the iOS Safari, this is where I get the error message. Okay, so this is where, so WebAuthn 107. Yep. Okay, so this is pointing me to WebAuthn.js.107, or line 107 is right here. So this is what I suspected. This is coming from the login function. I mean, of course it is, but I'm logging out the error message, which is this first item here, not allowed error. It's saying that the request has been canceled. I'm just going to refresh the page on my browser. I'm going to try typing in my username again. It worked. There we go. Well, okay, it almost worked. It did ask for my Face ID, and it did actually try to send the attestation. So it pushed this event back to the server, authenticate. But the error I see down here in the shell is attestation invalid origin. So I need to revisit my, where am I getting the origin from? Okay, so I've get origin function, which must be a private function down here. Let's see. It's in here somewhere. Maybe is this a built-in Phoenix function? Don't know. Where is get origin? Get origin. All right, I'm gonna Command K2. That will fold up all of my functions. I don't see def get origin here. I'm not importing any functions. Maybe it's in the LiveShowy web. Let's see, get origin. That's probably where I put it, right? You know what? When in doubt, search get origin. Live helpers. That's where it is. Okay. Okay, so the error I got whenever I tried to log in from the iOS device was invalid origin. So why, like which origin am I getting actually? So if the application is running in developer mode, it's going to take the scheme and the host from the socket host URI. So this should be HTTP or HTTPS. And this host should be like localhost if I'm running locally, or it should be the ngrok URL. So I'm not exactly sure what it is, so I'm just going to IO inspect this. And then whenever I hit login here, I should see that origin show up in the terminal down here. Pardon me, in the shell. Okay, that is interesting. I think whenever the Phoenix localhost server, whenever you save a file, it will automatically refresh your browsers, any browsers that are watching the page. And it's really an amazing feature. But I think that maybe it's triggering the page reload. And I think that's why iOS is like I have to refresh the page manually before it will allow me to use WebAuthn. So not something I would expect to happen in production. Now I'm not seeing that here. Aha, okay. I bet I need to go to login to my login view, and I may not have actually used that get origin. Yep, I don't see it here. Okay, so let me figure out where it was here so I can reuse this. And so that happens during the... Okay, so this is when the form is being submitted. So I'm going to do the same thing here in the... Do this in the login view. Okay, there's origin, and then where do I pass this? I think it goes into challenge ops. Yep, okay, so that's why. I don't actually need that variable. I can just drop this right here. So hopefully this makes sense what just happened. I'm going to manually refresh the page. I'm going to give this a shot, and then I'll explain it if it works. It works. Okay. So here's why it wasn't working. So previously this was hard-coded to take the LiveShowy web.endpoint.url. And what is the value of that? So if we go to the console here, or the REPL, showy web.endpoint.url, it's HTTP localhost. Now, because the iPhone is accessing the site over ngrok, it's actually not using HTTP localhost, and that's why the server was not accepting the challenge that was created, because the challenge was being sent back to the server from that ngrok URL. There's a little bit more to it, but I think that is kind of like a high-level explanation of what was going on. So again, this get origin function takes the socket, and if we're in a developer environment, it will take whatever host it's being run from, and it will return that string as the origin. So I don't need this to be logged anymore. And then otherwise, if this is running in production, if the application's running in production, it will use LiveShowy web endpoint URL. Now, I do need to probably revisit this later on, because I'm kind of curious, should I just always, return the scheme and the host? I just don't know. Like, I need to kind of deploy this. I need to think through my deployment practice. If this is being deployed, say, to AWS or Fly.io or something like that, it's going to... Let's see where that's actually set. I think that's in dev config. So we have endpoint. URL is actually going to be derived from this HTTP setting. If we go to config, that's not that config. Config. So is there endpoint configured here? Okay, URL. Yeah, so the default in the config for the URL is localhost. But let's see if that changes in prod. No, okay. So yeah, I'm gonna have to revisit that once I'm closer to deployment or deploying into production. But for now, this is actually getting me what I need. It's getting me the correct URL and the scheme for whichever device is connected. So that fixes that problem. I'm going to check the sign up flow as well, because I have a feeling I need to update that, which I already did. Great. So all that happened here was I just missed one challenge that needed to have the dynamic origin set. Let me make sure. Let's see, do I need this variable? I'm not using it in more than one place, so I'm just going to take this function and call it directly on that key. Okay. Cool. Okay, so that fixes that problem. Let me go ahead and commit my changes here. I'm gonna undo that. I was experimenting with some things around Surface and having a conversation in the Surface channel on the Elixir Slack about kind of how the best way to wrap the Surface components. They're really handy. They have kind of covered a lot of the attributes you need for like form elements, for example. And I'm trying not to go and write a bunch of CSS in a CSS file because I like the Tailwind framework. Don't hate me for it. I just enjoy having, default. I like the componentized design system with Tailwind. The tricky thing is, like all of these components that were pre-built for Surface, like I would kind of need to rebuild them. Like I would need to wrap another component around them so that I could provide my custom styles consistently throughout the app. That seems to be the way to do things, and I'm just not sure how to do it cleanly without duplicating a bunch of props, for example. Let's see. I'm going to commit these changes. Okay. All right, so back to the task at hand. I'm going to close these tabs here. Don't need them. All right, so what does it look like? So on the Chrome on the right here, I'm on my settings page. I'm logged in as Owen at fake.com, and my username is Owen. And let's say I want to add a device. First of all, I don't have a lot of devices here, so I'm just going to delete my iPhone key. So again, this is the users table, user keys. I'm going to delete iPhone. I'm going to commit that, and then I'm going to reload the page. Well, I updated config, so I've got to restart the server, of course. Reload. There we go. All right, so I'm signed into my primary device. I registered for this account on Chrome, which you're seeing on the screen there. So I'm going to hit Add Device, and this is going to tell me. For now, this is kind of basic, but this is the plan so far. Is I generate a random code using the built-in Erlang module crypto.strongrandbytes. And I tell it to generate a 6-digit code, and then it encodes that as base 64. So that code actually gets saved into the database as a token. So let's see here. Let me sort these in reverse order. So this is the newest code here. It's for my user ID. So this points back to my user in the database and the users table. So this is it's a binary value with 6, bytes, which is base 64 encoded before it's sent to the client or the browser. So let's see here. I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to take this code, and on my iPhone, I'm going to go to this add device path. So it's my root URL / add device. I don't have a way currently to share my iPhone screen. I could probably do some research on that. So anyway, what I do right now is I will type in my email address, owen@fake.com, and then I'll type in this code that I see on the screen. This is a little bit suboptimal. I'm trying to imagine, typical users doing something like this. It probably just wouldn't happen. But there's good news. I'll come back to that in a second. So I'm going to label this iPhone, and then I'll try to show you my screen at least through the camera. Okay, so I've filled out the form. And so this is what it looks like. I've zoomed things in a little bit so you can hopefully see. So right now it's just one form with 3 fields. The thing I may be working on during this live stream is kind of breaking this down into kind of a multi-part form so that only one field is kind of rendered at a time. And that's actually fairly easy to do with live view. So what I do, once I hit add, it asks me if I want to use Face ID. So I'm going to hit continue, and then it's going to scan my face. Then I got a success message. You might have seen the request show up in the, well, you didn't see it because I wasn't sharing my screen, but there was another request that shows up in the REPL for Elixir, and I saw that there was a database record added. So let's take a look at that. So now if I go back to user keys, I had my default key only. Now I have my iPhone key. Pretty awesome, right? So now from this mobile device, I can go to my settings page. I can see the same information I see on desktop. If my laptop crashed and burned, I would still be able to access my account from my iPhone. So on that note, there's actually some change. So WebAuthn is still a fairly new technology. There's actually a video I watched last night that was on point and like super relevant to what I'm doing here. And that was just from Google I/O a couple of days ago, this week. So check out Google Chrome developers. And the video is called A Path to a World Without Passwords. It's from May 12th, 2022. And it's a great kind of crash course. It's only 17, 18 minutes long. So it's a great crash course in WebAuthn, kind of if you don't already know what I'm kind of dealing with here. But it also kind of halfway through talks about kind of some of the features that are in the works. So the first one that's really important to me is cross-device sign-in with a passkey. And I think this is already supported on Android devices. The nice thing is it seems like I don't have to add any more code. Like this add device branch that I'm working on may be obsoleted by this work on WebAuthn. But the whole idea is you'll be able to, like say you've signed up for LiveShowy on your iPhone, or let's say your Android device, because I think this is currently an Android-only feature. Or you know what, let's look back up a little bit. Let's say you registered for LiveShowy on your laptop and you wanted to add your Android device. So Android already supports this feature where you can scan a QR code from the desktop browser or from another browser, and it will basically authenticate, like it will add that key from your Android device. And then that can be used for authentication on your app. And it has all the security benefits that you get with WebAuthn we've already kind of talked about. So it's safe from phishing because it's a private public key combo. And yeah, it's you don't have to worry about writing down passwords or storing them in a password manager. But that brings me to the next point, where there is actually some work being done on passkeys. I think maybe it's further back here. So yeah, passkeys will allow me to, and I maybe don't even have to do anything to the code to allow this. Passkeys, I believe this would replace passwords and I watched this last night, so I'm struggling to explain this. But if I remember correctly, it would store the public key or maybe the private key in like a password manager. So if you're on a Mac or iOS, that would be iCloud or Keychain. It could be 1Password if it supports that, and I think they've been doing a lot of work in a similar area. So I would imagine it is already supported on 1Password. But that's going to be really cool. Like that's going to make basically managing all this a lot easier for me as a single developer. And yeah, this whole branch that I've been working on for 2 weeks maybe just is obsoleted with passkeys and cross-device authentication. But it's fine. Like it's I think a necessary thing for now. And you know, it was a couple of weeks, but only because I was spending an hour or two here and there, and not giving it serious dedicated focus. Okay, so I think that actually works the way I need it to. I've been able to register an additional device twice. The UI on this is not, you know, this is kind of contrary to my past side projects where I would kind of build up all the UI, make it look pretty kind of first and very early on. This, I've done some very basic limited styling, but I haven't built up any components aside from like a heading component just to kind of get Surface up and running. And then this live nav dashboard is a component, but that's, or live nav bar is a component. Anyway, that's something I'm kind of saving for later, is kind of UI polish and that kind of thing. So this is about as bare bones as it can be for adding devices and that kind of thing. So the question is, what do I want to do next? What did I say I wanted to do? So I'm not really, so this support up to 3 devices, it's kind of arbitrary. I think the idea is, you know, if the app takes off and there's, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people using the app, you know, and if there's an unlimited number of devices, then just imagine how many devices. Not that every user would take advantage of that, but ideally you'd want every user to have at least 2 devices registered in case one, you know, fails or whatever. This is not like a life critical app. It's not managing your, you know, payroll or healthcare or anything like that. It's just an entertainment app, but still, you know, you wouldn't want to lose access to your account. And as a service, I wouldn't want to necessarily have to, you know, provide that support. You know, if you can avoid it, and just make it easy to use. That's the way to go. So all that is to say, I think I'm going to rephrase this. I'm going to allow 5 devices. This is still arbitrary. I think I'm going to say limit to 5 devices. I may actually do this last though, because I need to see if this should be done in the database. If there's like I'm using Postgres, so this should be something that Postgres can do at the database level. I may also be able to as I'm thinking about this, let's look at ecto chain sets, because I think I'm just going to pull up this tab here, ecto.chainset. Let's see. So let me show you, I guess, why I'm looking at chain sets user. So the user schema has an association with user keys. And so the association is a has many. So a user, like I can have many keys. I can have my iPhone, I can have my laptop, I can have my YubiKey. There's no built-in limit to that. So I think what I'm looking at now is, do change sets have a feature where I can kind of constrain how many associated schemas there are. Validate number. It's not what I need. Validate. Cast assoc. Okay, I think I'm getting warmer. So association constraint sounds like what I want, but I don't see like a limit. There's you can pass a message, which would be like, you know, if it fails, what do you tell the user? Don't need to just define the name. Don't want to match. This may be more of a custom thing where I need to, let's see. Yeah, I need to do more research, so that's not going to happen on today's live stream. So I'll save that for last and maybe punt on that, actually, if I want to just merge this branch today. Okay, so the other things I wanted to do were add a last used column to the user keys table so that it would, so you could see, like we could just query, like if this key hasn't been used in X amount of time, message the user, maybe after a while, like if we needed to do cleanup, we could say maybe these keys can only be stored up to a year. And if they're unused for a year, then, or they can be stored eternally, you know, as long as the app is alive, but they must be used at least once a year. I think the question is, what makes sense as a business? If LiveShowy was running as a business and let's say, you know, it hasn't taken over the world for the first few years, you might not have an opportunity to use LiveShowy out in the world. Like you might have an event. There may be no events that have LiveShowy enabled. So that key might not be used more than once a year. But if I'm doing this as a web-based app, then yeah, how long do I want that period to be? Last used. Okay, so I think my plan, at least for the moment, is I'm going to add this column. I'm not going to add any logic for automatically cleaning up keys or sending out emails about unused keys. I'm just going to add the last used column and update it whenever a user logs in with that device. And also show it to the user so they can kind of see when it's been used. That might also be useful. I mean, if you have 4 or 5 keys and you know that you've only been using one, you know, if you see those timestamps and maybe you see a newer timestamp than you expected, maybe someone has accessed your account with that key, and that would be a problem. So before I jump into this, I'm going to take a quick break. So I will be back in just about, let's say, 5-10 minutes. All right, I'm back. So, all right, so time to add this new column where we find out and update when a key was last used. So it's time to make a migration. So I'm going to stop the server. We're going to run mix ecto.gen.migration. Add last used to user keys. All right, so this is how you do it. I'm going to alter the table user keys. I'm going to add last used date. Ooh, date time I think is what I want, and then default. This probably doesn't work, so I'm going to check. Where's the migrations here? Probably in ecto SQL. There it is. Okay, let's see. Add. So I do know I don't want it to be null, so I'm going to false. I'm going to make that false, so it will disallow null values. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm just realizing I did not, whenever I created this table, I did not add the timestamps. I didn't use the timestamps helper, so it doesn't have like an inserted at or updated at, which is actually fine. This last use column is actually going to serve the purpose that I need, so I don't necessarily need those timestamps, those traditional timestamps columns. But I'm curious, how do I get the default to be like now in SQL? Aha, there we go. So the default would be fragment now. Okay, that makes sense. So fragment's like raw SQL that it will run. Datetime, is datetime the type that I want, or do I want naive datetime? You know, I don't know if we typically use, yeah, those are naive. Okay, so there's no time zone Z. There's no indication on this. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to use naive datetime. So it'll just be formatted the same way as created at and updated. I'm not even sharing my screen. Okay. so that